She divorced her billionaire husband for a huge settlement, but a big surprise was waiting. She thought walking away with $50 million would be the end of her story, but it was only the beginning. Can money ever replace the love you walked away from? And what if the man you left behind never truly let you go? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever made a choice that looked perfect on paper but left your heart in pieces? Raya Whitmore is a caramel-skinned beauty from Atlanta, Georgia. Bold, ambitious, and stunning, she's the kind of woman who walks into a room and shifts the air. She married into wealth, choosing love with a powerful man rather than the quiet safety of a regular life. But love, as she'd learn, doesn't always come in the shape you dream about. If you've ever believed that sometimes love deserves a second chance, hit that subscribe button. And if you don't believe in second chances, maybe you're the one who needs to hear this story the most. This story isn't just about betrayal, money, or love. It's about the decisions we make when we think we have nothing left to lose. About a woman who thought she was winning when she signed her divorce papers, only to discover she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Some stories are built to entertain. This one, it's meant to make you feel. This story will challenge everything you think you know about love, pride, betrayal, and redemption. Welcome back to the channel, my beautiful story family. Before we begin, I'd be glad to know that these lessons reach people across the globe. So please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And to all our new and returning subscribers, thank you for being part of this growing community. You're the heartbeat of this channel. Now, let us begin. Raya Whitmore stood at the edge of the stage, her heels clicking against the polished floor as the applause faded into a low hum. The tech conference buzzed around her. Hundreds of sharp minds, sleek suits, and flickering screens showcasing the future. Her keynote had just ended, a fiery call to rethink innovation, and her voice still echoed in her ears, steady despite the nerves that had clawed at her all morning. She smoothed her navy blazer, her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders, and scanned the crowd descending into chatter. That's when she saw him. Bo Lancaster leaned against a pillar near the front row, arms crossed, his tailored charcoal suit cutting a line that drew eyes without effort. He wasn't clapping, wasn't rushing to network like the others, just watching her, his hazel eyes sharp with something she couldn't place. Curiosity, maybe, or challenge. She'd heard of him, of course. Billionaire CEO of Lancaster Dynamics, a name that carried weight in boardrooms and headlines. But seeing him now, all quiet intensity, felt different. She stepped off the stage, intending to slip away for a coffee, when he moved toward her, his stride deliberate. "That was bold," he said, his voice low, smooth like aged whiskey. "Calling out half the industry for chasing trends instead of building something real." Raya tilted her head, meeting his gaze without flinching. "If they can't handle the heat, they shouldn't be in the game. You disagree?" His lips twitched, a flicker of a smile that didn't quite bloom. "Number I like it. Too many people in this room play it safe. You don't." She crossed her arms, sizing him up. "And you do." "Sometimes." He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking. "But I'm more interested in what drives someone like you. Passion, or just a knack for shaking things up?" Her pulse ticked up, but she kept her tone cool. "Both. You don't change the world by sitting still. What about you? What drives a man who's already got everything?" "Not everything," he said, his eyes locking on hers, and there it was, a spark, a pull she hadn't expected. "I'm Bo, by the way." "Raya," she replied, though he'd likely known that from the program. "And I'm guessing you're not here for the free coffee." He laughed, a low, warm sound that softened the edges of his intensity. "Number I came for the ideas. Yours caught me." The conversation stretched over coffee, then dinner, then late into the night at a quiet bar near the venue. He asked about her work, her theories on tech's future, listening with a focus that made her feel seen, not just heard. She challenged him back, his company's latest AI rollout, his obsession with control, and he took it, firing back with questions that kept her sharp. By the time the bartender called last rounds, she realized she hadn't laughed this hard in months, hadn't felt this alive in a room with someone who matched her fire. Days blurred into weeks, a whirlwind of stolen moments, private jets to coastal cities, dinners in hidden restaurants, debates that turned into kisses fierce enough to leave her breathless. Beau was relentless, not just in pursuit, but in how he saw her, her mind, her drive, the way she refused to bend. "You're not like anyone I've met," he'd said one night, his hand tracing her jaw as they lay tangled in a hotel suite, the ocean roaring beyond the windows. "Marry me, Raya." She'd laughed, thinking it a joke, but his eyes were serious, steady. "Why?" she'd asked, propping herself up, her heart thudding. "We've known each other 6 weeks." "Because I don't want to wait," he'd said, sitting up, his voice firm. "I know what I want. You do too. Say yes." Her breath caught, logic warring with the rush of him, his certainty, his heat, the way he made her feel invincible. "Yes," she'd whispered, and he'd kissed her like the world was theirs to claim. The wedding was quick, secret, a rooftop at dusk, just them, a officiant, and a city skyline as witness. She wore a simple white dress, he a suit that hugged him like a second skin, and the vows were short, raw, theirs. But as the ink dried on the marriage license, Beau slid a stack of papers across the table, his expression shifting to something cooler, businesslike. "One more thing," he said, handing her a pen. "A prenup. Standard stuff. Sign it." Raya frowned, the glow of the moment dimming. "Now? Can't it wait?" "It's just paperwork," he said, his tone light but insistent. "Protects us both. You trust me, don't you?" She hesitated, the pen heavy in her hand, her eyes skimming the dense text. Clauses, numbers, terms she didn't fully grasp. Trust, love. The words blurred together and his hand brushed hers, warm, urging. "Okay," she said, signing with a flourish, pushing the unease aside. He smiled, pulling her into a kiss, and she let the doubt drown in the heat of him. But as they stepped into his world, his estate, his life, the open loop of that moment lingered, a quiet hum beneath the surface. What had she signed? What had she missed? She'd find out eventually, but not yet. "Hey, everyone," she'd say, her voice bright if this were her video, a smile masking the tension coiling inside her. "Have you ever signed something out of love, only to regret it later? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one who's been swept up like this." The estate sprawled before her like a kingdom carved from glass and stone, its elegance undeniable, but its chill seeping into her bones. Raya wandered the halls, her footsteps echoing off marble floors, the vastness swallowing her. Beau's home, no, their home now, was a masterpiece. Towering windows framing manicured gardens, chandeliers dripping crystal, rooms that stretched into shadows. But it was silent. Too silent, the kind of quiet that pressed against her chest and made her miss the hum of her old apartment, the chaos of her own life. Beau was gone before dawn most days, his empire demanding him. Meetings, calls, trips that stretched into nights. She'd wake to an empty bed, his side cool, a note on the pillow if she was lucky. Back late. Don't wait up. She didn't at first, filling her days with her own work, consulting gigs, tech papers, trying to keep her fire alive in this gilded cage. But the hours grew long, the distance between them wider, and the estate's beauty started to feel like a mask. "Missed you last night," she said one evening, catching him in the kitchen, his tie loose, a glass of bourbon in hand. The clock ticked past 10, the first time she'd seen him in days. He glanced up, his hazel eyes tired but warm. "Yeah, sorry. Board's on my back about the new rollout. You know how it is." "Do I?" She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her voice sharper than she meant. "You're here, but you're not. What's going on, Bo?" He set the glass down, stepping closer, his hand brushing her arm. "It's just work, Raya. You knew what you signed up for. My life's not small." "I didn't sign up for a ghost," she shot back, pulling away. "We're married. Doesn't that mean something?" "It does," he said, his tone firm, but his eyes flickered. Guilt, maybe, or distraction. "I'm trying. This is temporary." She wanted to believe him, but the warmth of their whirlwind was fading, replaced by a chill she couldn't name. "Temporary," she echoed, softer now, testing the word. "Okay." He kissed her forehead, a fleeting gesture, then retreated to his office, the door clicking shut behind him. She stood there, the kitchen's sleek lines mocking her, and wondered, had he married her for love, or for something else? The prenup flashed in her mind, unread clauses, a signature born of trust. What had she agreed to? And why did this palace, so grand, feel so empty? The question gnawed at her, a thread tugging at the edges of her certainty, and she knew she couldn't let it rest, not forever. Something was shifting, and she'd find it, one way or another. Have you ever signed something out of love, only to regret it later? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Raya lingered in the kitchen after Beau's retreat, the echo of his office door clicking shut, a quiet stab in the stillness. The estate's elegance had lost its shine, the vast rooms and pristine surfaces feeling more like a stage than a home. She tried to bridge the gap. Dinners she cooked herself, late-night talks he brushed off with tired smiles. But the distance grew, a frost settling over them. His notes became shorter, his touches rarer, and the bed they shared stretched wider each night, its emptiness a weight she couldn't ignore. Now, weeks later, the chill had deepened. Raya lay awake, the silk sheets cool against her skin, Beau's side untouched again. He'd come home past midnight, his footsteps heavy, his voice a murmur from the hall before he slipped into the guest room. Another late call, he'd said, his eyes avoiding hers. The intimacy they'd once had, fierce and unguarded, was a memory fading fast, replaced by silences that stretched too long. She rolled over, staring at the ceiling, her mind churning. He was hiding something. She felt it in the way he tensed when she asked about his day, the way his phone stayed locked and close. One night she padded barefoot to the living room, drawn by the low hum of his voice. The clock glowed 2:14 a.m., the estate dark save for a sliver of light under his office door. She pressed her ear to the wood, her breath shallow, catching fragments. "Keep it quiet." "No, she doesn't know." His tone was sharp, clipped, not the warm cadence she knew. Her stomach twisted, suspicion coiling tight. Who was he talking to? What didn't she know? The next morning he found her in the sunroom, coffee in hand, her gaze distant over the gardens. He sat beside her, his hand resting on her knee, a rare touch that startled her. "You're up early," he said, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "Couldn't sleep," she replied, setting her mug down, her eyes locking on his. "You?" "Same." He squeezed her knee, a flicker of something, need, maybe, crossing his face. "I miss you, Raya. It's been rough." Her heart tugged, but she didn't soften. "Then talk to me, Beau. You're here, but you're not. What's going on?" He leaned closer, his forehead brushing hers, and for a moment she thought he'd open up. "It's just work," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. "Stupid pressure. I don't want it touching you." She pulled back, searching his face. It already is. You're shutting me out. I'm not, he said, too quick, his hand tightening on her leg. I just need you. That's all. He kissed her then, slow and deep, a hunger in it that pulled her in despite herself. She let him, craving the connection, but when it ended, he stood, offering a tired smile before heading upstairs. The warmth faded fast, leaving her with the same questions. Why the late calls? Why the distance? He sought comfort in her, but gave her nothing back, and the gap between them yawned wider. That afternoon, restless and fed up, she dug through the safe where he'd stashed the prenup after the wedding. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages, the legal jargon blurring until one clause snapped into focus. In the event of divorce initiated by Raya Whitmore Lancaster, she shall receive a settlement of $50 million, contingent upon filing within the first 5 years of marriage. Her breath stopped. 50 million. A fortune dangled like a lure, or a trap. She reread it, the words searing into her. He'd tied her freedom to a payout, one she hadn't even clocked when she signed. She sank onto the floor, the document trembling in her grip. Was this why he'd pushed the prenup? A test? A bribe? Or something else entirely? The late-night calls replayed in her mind. She doesn't know. And suspicion hardened into a blade. He was hiding more than work stress, and this massive sum, was a twist she hadn't seen coming. Did he expect her to leave, want her to? Or was it insurance against something bigger? The bed felt colder that night, even with him beside her, his arms slung over her waist like nothing had changed. But everything had. She lay there, eyes open, the prenup's secret burning in her chest. 50 million reasons to walk away, and a million more to find out what he wasn't telling her. Whatever game this was, she wasn't playing blind anymore. Raya lay still beside Bo, the prenup's weight a silent scream in her mind as his arm rested heavy across her waist. $50 million, a number that danced behind her closed eyes, taunting her with freedom, with questions. His breathing steadied, deep and even, but sleep eluded her, the late-night calls and his evasions replaying like a broken record. She slipped from the bed before dawn, the clause echoing, if she files for divorce, and paced the estate's empty halls, her bare feet cold against the marble. What was he hiding? And why did this fortune feel less like a gift and more like a chain? Now, days later, she sat across from Brielle in a bustling cafe, the clatter of cups and voices a stark contrast to the estate's suffocating quiet. Brielle, her oldest friend, sharp-tongued and sharper-eyed, sipped her latte, her dark curls spilling over her shoulder as she studied Raya with a mix of concern and exasperation. "You look like hell," she said, setting her cup down. "What's going on in that palace of yours?" Raya exhaled, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "It's not a palace, it's a tomb. Bo's, distant, secretive. And I found something in the prenup, 50 million if I divorce him." Brielle's brows shot up, a low whistle escaping her lips. 50 mil? Damn, girl, that's a golden parachute. So what's the plan? You cashing out? "I don't know," Raya admitted, her voice low, tight. "Part of me wants to run. But it's not that simple. He's hiding something, Brie. Late calls, vague answers. I can't tell if he's protecting me or playing me." Brielle leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Listen to me, Raya. You've got fire, always have. But before you torch this marriage for a payout, think. 50 million's a hell of a temptation. But what if there's more to it? What if he's not the enemy here? You've got to know what you're walking away from, or into." Raya frowned, the words sinking in, stirring the doubt she'd tried to bury. "You think I should stay?" "I think you should be sure," Brielle said, her tone softening but firm. "You don't sign your life away for love and then bail without the full story. Dig deeper. You're too smart to guess your way out of this. The advice lingered as Raya left the cafe, the city's hum a backdrop to her churning thoughts. She wanted answers, not just a check. Brielle was right about that. But the temptation gnawed at her, freedom so close she could taste it. That afternoon, it sharpened into something else entirely when Mason Caldwell strode into her orbit. She'd met him at a tech mixer, a last-minute decision to shake off the estate's gloom. Mason, tall, lean, with a grin that cut like sunlight and eyes that lingered too long, owned Caldwell Ventures, a rising star in the industry. He found her by the bar, his voice smooth as he slid a drink her way. Raya Whitmore, or should I say Lancaster, heard you killed it at that conference last year. Still got that spark. She took the drink, her lips curving despite herself. It's still Whitmore in my head, and yeah, I've got plenty of spark. You? Enough to keep up, he said, leaning closer, his tone playful but edged with intent. I've got a deal cooking, AI-driven logistics, game-changer stuff. Need a mind like yours on it. What do you say? Her pulse ticked up, the offer a lifeline to the life she'd known, work, purpose, not just Beau's shadow. I'd say I'm listening, she replied, meeting his gaze. Good. His smile widened and he dropped his voice, flirtation weaving through it. And off the record, a woman like you shouldn't be wasting away in some billionaire's mansion. You're too alive for that. The words hit hard, fanning the ember of her restlessness. She laughed, light but real, and for the first time in weeks she felt seen, not as Beau's wife but as Raya. Careful, Mason, she teased, sipping her drink. You don't know what I'm wasting. Oh, I've got a guess, he said, his eyes holding hers, warm and bold. Think about the deal. And the rest. She left the mixer buzzing, Mason's card in her pocket, his offer and his interest, tangling with Brielle's warning. 50 million if she walked. A business deal that could reclaim her fire. And Beau, still a mystery, his late-night whispers a lock she hadn't cracked. The estate loomed ahead as she drove back, its elegance a cold facade, and she gripped the wheel tighter. Mason saw her spark. Did Beau? Or had he married her to dim it? The choice loomed, sharp and double-edged. Stay and fight for the truth, or leave and take the fortune. And maybe Mason's hand. She wasn't sure yet, but one thing was clear. She wouldn't fade into that silent palace without a fight. Raya drove back from the mixer, Mason's card burning a hole in her pocket. His words, "You're too alive for that," ringing louder than the estate's silence as she pulled into the driveway. Brielle's caution had rooted deep, urging her to unearth Beau's secrets, but the pull of freedom, of reclaiming herself, tugged harder. The prenup's promise, 50 million, flashed like a beacon, and Mason's offer, his easy charm, fanned the flames of a life she'd lost in Beau's shadow. She'd paced the grand foyer that night, the chandelier's glow mocking her, and made her choice. She couldn't stay in this limbo, half-loved, half-known. Now, weeks later, Raya sat in her lawyer's office, the divorce papers crisp beneath her fingers, the ink of her signature still wet. She'd filed citing neglect, emotional, not financial, her heart pounding as she handed them over. The estate had become a mausoleum, Beau's late nights and vague excuses a wall she couldn't breach. She'd tried one last time, cornering him in his office days before, her voice steady despite the ache. "Tell me why," she'd said, standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "Why you're gone, why you won't talk. Give me something, Beau." He'd looked up from his desk, his hazel eyes shadowed, tired. "It's work, Raya. Always has been. I thought you understood." "I don't," she'd shot back, stepping closer. "I'm your wife, not a decoration. If you won't let me in, what's the point?" He'd leaned back, silent too long, then sighed. "Maybe there isn't one." The words had cut, final, and she'd walked out, the decision crystallizing. Now the papers were served, delivered to him at Lancaster Dynamics' gleaming headquarters. She'd expected a fight, a plea, something, but when he called her that evening, his voice was calm, flat, a stranger's tone cutting through the line. "You filed," he said. "No question, just fact." "Yeah," she replied, standing by the penthouse window she'd rented in the city, the skyline a jagged comfort. "I'm done, Bo. I can't keep waiting for you to show up." He didn't argue, didn't beg, and the silence stretched until she thought the call had dropped. Then he spoke, low and deliberate, a chill threading through his words. "You'll regret this." Her breath caught, the weight of it landing heavy. What's that supposed to mean? But he'd already hung up, the line dead, leaving her staring at her reflection in the glass, his warning a splinter she couldn't pull out. Regret what? The money? The marriage? Or something he hadn't shown her yet? She'd moved out that week, her things boxed and shipped, the estate's cold elegance fading into memory. The 50 million loomed, hers once the divorce finalized, but his words gnawed at her, a quiet threat or a promise she couldn't decode. She met Mason the next day, his grin bright against the gray of her doubts, and he slid a contract across the table at a sleek downtown bar. "Deal's yours if you want it," he said, his voice warm, teasing. "And maybe dinner after to celebrate." She smiled, the flirtation a balm, but Bo's voice echoed, "You'll regret this," and her hand hesitated over the pen. "Let me think on it," she said, tucking the contract away, her mind split between the future Mason offered and the past she'd torched. Alone that night, the penthouse quiet, she replayed it all. Bo's distance, his cryptic farewell, the prenup's fortune now within reach. Had she acted too fast, driven by pride instead of patience? Or was this the right break, the clean cut she'd needed? The answer eluded her, but one thing stuck. Bo hadn't fought. He'd let her go, with only that haunting line to mark the end. Do you think she made the right decision? Or was this a move of pride over love? Raya stood in the penthouse that night, the echo of Bo's voice. "You'll regret this," a persistent hum beneath the city's pulse outside her window. She'd filed the divorce papers, walked away from the estate's icy grip, and waited for the relief to settle in. It hadn't. Not fully. Mason's contract sat untouched on her coffee table, his easy grin a lifeline she wanted to grab, but Bo's warning lingered, a loose thread she couldn't cut. The 50 million was hers once the ink dried on the settlement, but the freedom she'd chased felt shadowed, unsteady. Now, months later, Raya's life glittered on the surface, a whirlwind of post-divorce reinvention. She'd plunged into the city's elite circles, her name buzzing at rooftop parties where champagne flowed and laughter masked the sharp edges of ambition. Her tech consulting gigs morphed into a full-fledged venture, her mind sharp and alive again, pitching ideas to investors who hung on her every word. The penthouse became her sanctuary, sleek and hers, filled with art and noise and the chaos she'd craved. She was Raya Whitmore again, not Lancaster, not a wife waiting in the wings, and the world noticed. Mason Caldwell was a constant, his pursuit relentless but smooth, a dance she couldn't quite step away from. He'd show up at her events, all charm and tailored suits, his voice low as he leaned in close. "You're killing it out there," he said one night, a gala's lights glinting off his glass as he handed her another. "Told you you're too big for that old life." She smiled, the compliment warming her, but her reply was sharp-edged. "Maybe, but I'm not looking for a new one to fit into either." He laughed, undeterred, his hand brushing hers. "Fair. How about dinner tomorrow? No strings, just us." "Us?" She raised a brow, sipping her drink, the flirtation familiar but tinged with unease. "I'll think about it." He grinned, stepping back, but his eyes held hers too long, a pull she felt and fought. Mason was easy, too easy, and something about it grated, a note off-key she couldn't place. The parties, the deals, his chase, it all sparkled, but beneath it, a hollow ache persisted, a sense that this new life was a costume she hadn't fully zipped up. Then the messages started. The first came in a plain envelope slipped under her penthouse door. No stamp, no sender, just her name scrawled in tight, slanted handwriting. She tore it open, her pulse ticking up as she read, "You're not done yet." 4 words, stark and cryptic, chilling her despite the warm room. She turned the paper over, found nothing, and shoved it into a drawer, telling herself it was a prank, a leftover echo of the divorce's mess. But they kept coming. A text from an unknown number a week later, "You're not done yet." Then another envelope, this one left at her office, the same phrase in the same hand. Her stomach twisted each time, the words burrowing deeper. Who? Bo? Tessa? Stirring trouble again? Or someone new watching from the edges of her bright new world? She checked her locks, scanned the faces at every party, but found no answers, only questions that piled like storm clouds. Mason noticed her tension one night, catching her on the balcony of a crowded loft party, the city sprawling below. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer than usual, his hand hovering near her shoulder. "You've been jumpy." She forced a smile, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just tired. Long week." He studied her, his gaze too keen. "If something's up, you can tell me. I'm here." The offer hung there, genuine maybe, but it didn't settle her. "Thanks," she said, stepping back, the distance deliberate. "I'll figure it out." He nodded, letting it drop, but the unease stayed, a shadow trailing her through the laughter and lights. The messages gnawed at her. "You're not done yet," a warning or a taunt she couldn't shake. Her life glittered, rich and loud, but something felt off, a crack in the facade. Mason's pursuit, the parties, the money. It was all hers, but not quite right. And Bo's voice, that last call, "You'll regret this," wove through it all, a thread tying her past to this unsteady present. She wasn't done, not yet. But with what? Raya stepped back into the penthouse after that balcony moment with Mason, the party's noise swallowing her unease, but the weight of the strange messages, "You're not done yet," clung like damp air. She'd brushed off Mason's concern, her smile tight, and slipped away early, the city's glow a blur as she drove home. The notes and texts piled up in her mind, a riddle she couldn't crack, and sleep came fitfully, her dreams jagged with Bo's voice, "You'll regret this," and faceless shadows watching her every move. The life she'd built, parties, ventures, Mason's orbit, shone bright, but the cracks were widening, and she felt them. Now, days later, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, an unfamiliar number cutting through the morning's quiet. She hesitated, her coffee steaming untouched, then answered, her voice cautious. "Hello? Raya Whitmore?" The man's tone was clipped, professional, edged with a weariness she couldn't place. "This is Cyrus Hale. I was Bo Lancaster's family attorney." Her breath caught, the name a jolt. "Was?" "Henry Lancaster passed last night," Cyrus said, pausing as if to let it sink in. "Bo's father. I'm handling the estate, and there's something you need to know." She sank onto a stool, her pulse ticking up. "Okay. What's this got to do with me?" Cyrus exhaled, a sound heavy with reluctance. "Everything, I'm afraid. Henry's will, it's unusual. Bo's inheritance, the bulk of Lancaster dynamics, and the family fortune comes with a condition. He has to remarry his last legal spouse within a year of Henry's death, or it all goes to a trust. Non-negotiable." Her mind blanked, then raced, the words slamming into her. His last legal spouse. You mean you, Cyrus finished, his voice flat. You're still his ex-wife, Raya. The divorce finalized, but the will's terms don't care about that. It's you or nothing. She gripped the counter, her knuckles whitening. That's insane. Why would Henry do this? Control, Cyrus said, a bitter edge creeping in. Henry was old school, family legacy, bloodlines, all that. He hated the divorce, thought it was a mistake. This is his way of forcing Beau's hand, or yours. Mine? Her laugh was sharp, disbelieving. I'm not remarrying him. I walked away for a reason. I get it, Cyrus replied, softer now. But I had to tell you. Beau knows. He's processing. Thought you should hear it from me first. The call ended, leaving her staring at the phone, the kitchen's sleek lines blurring as her thoughts spun. Beau's father, dead. A will tying his fortune to her, a condition so absurd it felt like a cosmic joke. She flashed to the estate, Beau's distance, the prenup's 50 million. Had Henry known she'd leave? Planted this to pull her back? And the messages, "You're not done yet," suddenly sharpened, a new layer clicking into place. Were they about this? She stood, pacing, her coffee forgotten. Beau hadn't called, not yet, but she could feel him out there, reeling from the same bombshell. Remarry her. After the silence, the secrets, the divorce. The idea churned her stomach, anger and confusion tangling tight. She'd built a life, parties, Mason, her own empire, and now this. A curveball from a dead man's grave, threatening to drag her back. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Mason. Dinner tonight? You seemed off last time. She stared at it, his easy warmth a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. But Cyrus's words drowned him out. He has to remarry you, and she dropped the phone, her hands shaking. What did Beau think of this? Would he fight it, or come for her, expecting her to bend? The 50 million she'd claimed felt small now, a footnote to this twisted legacy. She wasn't done, not with Beau, not with the past, and the realization hit hard. Her new life might not be hers to keep. Raya paced the penthouse after Cyrus's call, the will's bizarre condition, remarry his last legal spouse, a live wire in her chest. Henry's death and his twisted legacy churned her thoughts, the messages. You're not done yet. Now a haunting chorus she couldn't silence. She'd ignored Mason's text, her focus narrowing to Beau. Where was he in this? The estate, the prenup, the divorce, all of it loomed larger, a web she'd thought she'd escaped. Sleep didn't come, and by morning her phone stayed silent, his absence louder than any plea. Now, 3 days later, Beau stood in her penthouse doorway, unannounced, his frame filling the space with a presence she'd tried to forget. His suit was rumpled, his hazel eyes shadowed, and the air shifted as he stepped inside, uninvited but not resisted. She crossed her arms, her pulse kicking up, the sight of him a jolt after months apart. "Cyrus told you," he said, his voice low, rough, skipping the preamble. "About the will." "Yeah," she replied, her tone cold, sharp. "Your dad's last laugh, huh? Tying your fortune to me." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered too well. "It's not a joke, Raya. It's a mess, and I need your help." She raised a brow, leaning against the counter, her guard up. "My help? You've got some nerve showing up here after everything." "I know," he said, stepping closer, his eyes locking on hers. "But hear me out. Remarry me, just for a year. We play the part, I get the inheritance, then we're done. Clean break. You walk away with more than the 50 mil. Name your price." Her laugh burst out, loud and jagged, slicing through the tension. "You're kidding. Remarry you? After the silence, the secrets, the way you let me go? I'd rather burn that money than tie myself to you again." He didn't flinch, just watched her, his jaw tight. I get it. You hate me. But this isn't about us. It's about what's at stake. The company. Thousands of jobs, everything my father built. 1 year, Raya. Then you're free. She shook her head, turning away, her laughter fading into something bitter. Free? I was free the day I signed those papers. You don't get to waltz back in and ask for this. I'm not asking for love, he said, his voice dropping, steady. I'm asking for a deal. You're smart. You know what this could mean for you, too. She hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in, her resolve wavering. A year. A fortune beyond the 50 million. A chance to rewrite her future on her terms. She faced him, her eyes narrowing. Why should I trust you? Last time you shut me out. What's different now? He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint cedar of his cologne, his gaze raw. Everything's different. I'm not hiding this time. You'll know every move. Her breath hitched, doubt and temptation tangling tight, when her phone buzzed on the counter, a distraction she seized. It was a text from her mother's nurse. Bills cleared last month. Anonymous donor. Thought you should know. Raya froze, the words a punch, her mind racing back to her mother's cancer treatments, the crushing debt she'd been chipping away at. Anonymous. Her eyes snapped to bow, suspicion flaring. Did you... She stopped, her voice trembling, then pressed on. The hospital bills. My mom's. Was that you? His face shifted, a flicker of something. Guilt, maybe, before he nodded, slow and deliberate. Yeah, I used part of the inheritance early access. Didn't want you worrying about it. She stared at him, the twist hitting hard, her chest tightening with a mix of anger and something softer. You paid them off? And didn't tell me? You'd have fought me on it, he said, his tone quiet but firm. I wasn't doing it for leverage. I did it because I could. Her hands shook, the revelation cracking her armor. He'd been there, silently lifting a burden she'd carried alone, while she'd painted him as the villain. The deal, remarry for a year, loomed larger now, layered with this secret act, and her laugh from moments ago felt hollow. You're full of surprises, aren't you? She said, her voice softer, edged with conflict. Only when it matters, he replied, his eyes holding hers, steady and unguarded. She turned away, gripping the counter, her mind a storm. A year with him for the inheritance, and now this. A debt repaid in shadows. She didn't trust him, not fully, but the hesitation grew roots. What else didn't she know? And what would she risk to find out? Think about it, he said, stepping back, giving her space. I'll wait. He left, the door clicking shut, and she sank onto a stool, the text still glowing on her phone, his offer and his hidden kindness, a knot she couldn't untie. Not yet. Raya sat alone in the penthouse after Beau's departure, the silence pressing in as his offer, 1 year, remarry me, and the revelation about her mother's bills churned in her mind. The text from the nurse glowed accusingly on her phone, a lifeline he'd thrown her in secret, and it softened the edges of her anger, blurring the lines she'd drawn. She paced, weighing the deal. A year to secure his inheritance, a fortune for her, and a chance to peel back his layers. Truth or trap, she couldn't tell. By dawn, exhaustion and a flicker of something deeper, curiosity maybe, or unresolved pull, tipped the scale. She texted him, 1 year, my terms, no lies. His reply was instant. Done. Now, weeks later, they stood in a quiet courthouse, the second wedding a stark contrast to their first. No rooftop, no skyline, just a clerk and a vow stripped to essentials. Raya wore a simple black dress, her jaw set, while Beau's suit hung looser, his eyes locked on her with a mix of relief and something heavier. I do, she said, her voice steady but laced with defiance, and his echoed, quieter, waited. The ring slid onto her finger, new, plain, a symbol of the deal, and they were bound again, a contract dressed as marriage. The days that followed were tense, a careful dance in his estate once more. She kept her distance, working from a guest suite, her terms clear, separate lives, full disclosure. He honored it mostly, updates on the inheritance, no late-night calls she couldn't trace, but the air crackled when they crossed paths, old wounds and new stakes simmering beneath. She caught his glances, felt the pull, and pushed it down, determined to keep this clean. Then came the night that broke it all open. A storm battered the estate, rain hammering the windows, and they'd cracked a bottle of wine in the library. Her idea, a truce after a day of clipped words. One glass turned to three, the edges blurring, and the storm's roar matched the heat building between them. She laughed at something he said, a rare, real sound, and he leaned closer, his hand brushing hers on the table. "You're different," he said, his voice low, rough from the wine or something else. "Stronger." "Had to be," she replied, meeting his gaze, the alcohol loosening her guard. "You didn't leave me much choice." His eyes darkened and he stood, pulling her up with him, the space shrinking fast. "I didn't want you to go," he said, his breath warm against her cheek. "You think it was easy?" She scoffed, but her hands gripped his shirt, the tension snapping. "You didn't fight for me, Beau. You let me walk." He kissed her then, hard and sudden, a clash of need and frustration that stole her breath. She pushed back, matching him, their mouths fierce, almost punishing. The wineglass tipped, shattering on the floor, but they didn't stop, hands tearing at clothes, bodies colliding as they stumbled to the couch. His shirt hit the ground, her dress bunched at her hips, and when he pressed her down, his touch was raw, desperate, igniting her despite the anger still burning. Their lovemaking was intense, emotional, a storm of its own, all heat and edge. She arched into him, nails digging into his back, his groans mingling with her gasps as they moved together, fast and unrelenting. It was almost angry, a release of everything they'd held back, the divorce, the silence, the secrets. He thrust deeper, his hands framing her face, and she met him, fierce and unyielding, the line between love and fury blurring. "You left me," he whispered, his voice breaking as he hovered above her, sweat beading on his brow, their rhythm slowing but no less charged. "I didn't know how to stop you." She stared up at him, her chest heaving, tears pricking her eyes, not from sadness but from the weight of it all. "You didn't try," she shot back, her voice hoarse, but her hands pulled him closer, contradicting her words. He buried his face in her neck, his breath ragged, and they stayed there, tangled, the storm outside fading to a dull roar. The passion had cracked them open, raw and real, but the questions lingered. Why he'd let her go, what he'd hidden, what this year would mean. She didn't forgive him, not yet, but as his arms tightened around her, she felt the shift. This wasn't just a deal anymore. It was them, messy and alive, and she wasn't sure where it would lead. Raya lay tangled with Beau on the library couch, the storm's last rumbles fading as their breaths steadied, the heat of their clash still simmering beneath her skin. His whispered, "You left me," echoed in the quiet, a raw wound she couldn't unhear, and her own retort, "You didn't try," hung heavy between them. The wine-stained floor and scattered clothes marked the chaos of their reunion, but as he held her close, his heartbeat thudding against her, the deal they'd struck felt less like a contract and more like a tether, one she wasn't sure she wanted to snap. Sleep claimed them there, uneasy but entwined, a fragile truce in the wreckage. Now, days later, Raya roamed the estate's upper floors, restless and searching, not for answers at first, but for space to think. The passion had reignited something, a pull she couldn't deny, but the questions lingered. Who was he beneath the walls he'd built? She demanded no lies, and he'd given her glimpses, her mother's bills, the inheritance. But she sensed more, a depth he still guarded. In a dusty attic room, its door half hidden behind a bookshelf, she found it. The box was old, leather-bound, tucked under a loose floorboard she'd pried up on impulse. Inside, letters, dozens of them, yellowed and creased, tied with a faded ribbon. Her fingers hesitated, then untied it, her breath catching as she read the first. My dearest Beau, your laugh is the only thing keeping me sane. The handwriting was elegant, unfamiliar, signed Imani. Her stomach twisted as she skimmed more. I'll wait for you. No one else sees me like you do. Love letters, intimate and aching, none addressed to her. She stormed downstairs, the box clutched tight, finding Beau in his office, hunched over papers. What the hell is this? She demanded, slamming it onto his desk, letters spilling out like secrets too long buried. He looked up, his face paling as he recognized the contents. Raya. Who's Imani? She cut in, her voice sharp, trembling. You were engaged to her, weren't you? And you never said a word. He stood, slow, his hands braced on the desk, his eyes meeting hers, haunted, not defensive. Yes, he said, the word heavy. Imani Cross. We were engaged 5 years ago. Her chest tightened, anger flaring hot. And what? You just forgot to mention her? After all this, remarrying me that night, you're still hiding this? I'm not hiding, he said, stepping around the desk, his voice low, strained. I didn't know how to tell you. She vanished after a scandal. Her family's company crashed, fraud allegations, and she disappeared. No note, no goodbye. I looked for her, Raya. For years, she stared at him, the letters a weight in her hands, his admission cracking the image she'd built. Cold, distant Beau. Why didn't you say anything? She asked, softer now, the fight draining out of her. You let me think you were heartless. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, his gaze raw. Because I'm not good at this, at letting people in. Imani broke something in me when she left. Then you came and I couldn't lose you too. But I did, didn't I, when you walked away? Her breath hitched, the pieces shifting, his distance, his guilt, the way he'd clung to her that night. You're not heartless, she said, almost to herself, the letters trembling in her grip. You're broken. Maybe, he replied, stepping closer, his voice quiet but steady. But I'm trying. With you, I'm trying. She turned away, needing air, the attic's dust and Imani's words choking her. He wasn't the man she'd hated. He was fractured, carrying ghosts she hadn't seen. The passion they'd reignited wasn't a lie, but it was built on scars, and that shook her. Could she stay, help him mend, or was this too much, another wound to guard against? She sank onto a chair, the letters scattered at her feet, and he knelt beside her, not touching, just there. I'll tell you everything, he said, his voice a plea. No more walls. She nodded, shaken but listening, and saw the truth. He wasn't whole, but neither was she. The years stretched ahead, a chance to heal, or break them both. If someone you loved was broken, would you stay and help them heal, or protect yourself and walk away?